As reenactors of the American Revolution, we are constantly looking for new and interesting ways to engage with the public outside of battle reenactments. Believe it or not, battles do get stale after a while, and they account for only a small fraction of our total time spent at events. So we need to come up with other ways to keep ourselves and the public occupied. Sometimes we do this through surgery or cooking demonstrations, sometimes through pay calls, or even the occasional court-martial. But one thing that I don't see a lot of reenactors doing is recreating period-appropriate sports and activities. And it's not like we don't have documentation for the sorts of activities that soldiers of this time period would have engaged in. In fact, in the diary of Captain John Peebles of the 42nd Regiment, there is a reference to none other than our very own 54th Regiment hosting a regimental day of amusements while on garrison on Long Island in February of 1782. Among the activities included in this regimental field day, Captain Peebles draws attention to three activities in particular, those being a horse race, a sack race, and a grinning match. Now, horse racing and sack racing, I think, are fairly self-explanatory, but if you're like me, you might be scratching your heads right now thinking, what the heck is a grinning match? And I admit I was the same way when I first stumbled across this reference, so I had to look it up. As it turns out, a grinning match is an English tradition of uncertain origin that was performed at county fairs, and it involves two or more participants competing for a prize by taking turns to see who can make the ugliest possible facial expression, all while wearing a horse collar around their necks. I guess the idea being that once the collar is around your neck, you can no longer use your hands to manipulate your face. Just to prove that I'm not making this up, here's a contemporary description of the activity taken from The Sports and Pastimes of the People of England, written by Joseph Strutt in 1801. The grinning match is performed by two or more persons endeavoring to exceed each other in the distortion of their features, every one of them having his head thrust through a horse's collar. There are several contemporary illustrations depicting this activity as well. This one, by Thomas Rowlandson, dating to 1803, and this one by W. Humphreys, dating to 1777, thereby further illustrating that this tradition was alive and well during the Revolutionary period. Other written references to grinning matches date back as far as the 1690s. English essayist Joseph Addison wrote a rather humorous account of one being held upon the Taking of Namur, referring to the Siege of Namur in 1695, part of the 9 Years' War. His account reads as follows. Upon the taking of Namur, amid other public rejoicings made on that occasion, there was a gold ring given by a Whig justice of peace to be grinned for. The first competitor that entered the lists was a swarthy Frenchman who accidentally passed that way, and, being a man naturally of a withered look and hard features, promised himself good success. He was placed upon a table in the great point of view, and, looking upon the company like Milton's death, grinned horribly a ghastly smile. His muscles were so drawn together on each side of his face that he showed 20 teeth at a grin, and put the country in some pain lest a foreigner should carry away the honor of the day. But upon further trial, they found he was master only of the merry grin. He goes on for some time describing the various participants and their facial expressions. At one point, pointing out that one participant had been disqualified for having been caught drinking vinegar to aid his facial contortions. He also points out that another participant was disqualified because he was a Jacobite, and the judge didn't want the title of Best Grinner going to a disaffected person. So apparently this game was taken rather seriously. He continues, the prize, it seems, fell at length upon a cobbler, Giles Gorgon by name, who produced several new grins of his own invention. At the very first, he cast every human feature out of his countenance. At the second, he became the face of a spout. At the third, a baboon. At the fourth, the head of a bass violin. And at the fifth, a pair of nutcrackers. The whole assembly wondered at his accomplishments, and bestowed the ring on him unanimously. But what he esteemed more than all the rest, a country wench whom he had wooed in vain for about 5 years before, was so charmed by his grins and the applause which he received on all sides, that she married him the following week, and to this day wears the prize upon her finger, the cobbler having made use of it as a wedding ring. That's the earliest known written reference to a grinning match that I was able to come across, and what a peculiar story it is. Unfortunately, I was not able to dig up any information on when exactly this tradition originated. What I can say is that it seemed to have remained popular throughout the 18th century and well into the 19th century as well. By at least the 1830s, the prize for winning the competition, which had previously been small trinkets like gold rings, had transitioned to pounds of tobacco. In A General History of the Tobacco Plant, published in 1836, there's a reference to a grinning match taking place at Greenwich Fair in Kent, England, in which participants are described as gurning for baccy. So at some point, grinning became gurning, which still means the same thing, it's just a different regional dialect. In fact, the tradition lives on in the form of the World Gurning Championships, which are held annually in a small town in the northwest of England at the Egremont Crab Fair, which has been hosted since 1267, although that's not exactly an indication that the tradition itself is that old. So there you have it, a brief history of the grinning match, a rather peculiar English custom, and one of the many examples of the sorts of rabbit holes that you can lead yourself down when you research the American Revolution. I do think that this would be an interesting activity to recreate at an event sometime, and in fact, I think we have a number of people in our group who would be quite good at it. Anyway, that's going to do it for me today. Hope you enjoyed the video once again. God save the king.